Tory MP has had to apologise after telling a Bahraini human rights campaigner to go back to Bahrain. It's after the campaigner, who says he was tortured in his home country, made a complaint to the Conservative Party. Saeed Ahmed Al-Wadai alleges the comments made by MP Bob Stewart amounted to racial abuse, and he's also reported the incident to the police. The MP has since apologised and denied his comments were racist. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News tonight, where it's time now for Headliners.
Hello, good evening, welcome to Headliners. I am Simon Evans, looking ever more like Farmer Christmas, it has to be said these days. And joining me tonight are Josh Howie and Nick Dixon, very much a default panel. So let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages. We start with the Daily Mail, who lead with Rishi, I won't back down over strikes. And a picture of Gary Neville at the top there. We'll be discussing his clash with Rishi. Sunak. Telegraph has plea to end strikes as NHS faces meltdown, and that is Amber Heard reappearing on our pages as she was dominating them about a year ago. The Eye has no guarantee of ambulance for stroke or heart attack. Terrifying prospect for many people this Christmas, especially with a little bit of overdoing it at the Christmas turkey. The Guardian, ambulance strike threatens lives of 999 patients, warn NHS bosses. And they have something a little bit more Christmassy from Kharkiv there. The Financial Times, crisis talks with ambulance leaders as nurses threaten 6 months of strikes. And there's a picture of the RNLI doing their good work. The Mirror, you are working nurses to the bone. I don't think that is addressed specifically to me, at least I hope not. And the Daily Express, nurses, talk to us, Rishi. We don't want to break the bank. So the two sides of that story there. Metro has condition critical still on the NHS, and in fact with exactly the same photograph. Not sure exactly what we're looking at there. Perhaps we'll find out shortly. Talk us through the front pages very shortly. So, Josh, you have the Guardian front page, I believe.
Yeah, so their main story is ambulance strike threatens lives of N999 patients, warn NHS bosses. And they're saying this is the potential to be much worse than the nurses' strike last week, partly because it's an ambulance strike and it's a nurses' strike.
Yeah.
But there's also criticisms from GPs who are basically saying that no one's put out any warnings to people to say, essentially the advice would be, don't move.
Right.
Don't move. Yeah. Don't do anything risky. Don't just stay still in a bubble.
Don't pull crackers.
Don't put Hey, no. That could be like that could shock the heart.
Yeah.
You know,
bang. Don't climb up to the top of the tree. If the star isn't up now, it stays down.
That's it. Just sit there, watch GB News for the next couple of days.
What about stockings hung over open fires?
I mean, you're crazy, man.
That would be acrylics, synthetic fibres.
Absolute madness. I don't even want to think about all the things that go wrong.
Well, for you and I, a couple of infidels, we can shrug this stuff off. But Nick takes this season quite seriously. How do you feel about this?
About what, Christmas?
About Christmas being destroyed by ambulance drivers striking.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just because I'm a Christian. It's more just because I'm a person that I'm a bit worried about it. Because, I mean, this idea that, I mean, for example, the fact that you might call 999 and not hear anything until Thursday or Friday.
Not even hear anything?
Well, that was it said the massive disruption is expected to last for up to 3 days, with crews not reaching some patients who call 999 tomorrow until Thursday or Friday.
Yeah.
So aren't we on Tuesday tomorrow? I mean, that's mental.
What I was just trying to establish, and I'm not being facetious, will their call be answered, do you mean? And they'll be told it'll be 3 days? I mean, are they put into a holding system online as well?
Do you know what? I've only got the same little story.
I think there's nobody's...
It's quite small writing, so I don't... Yeah. I'm not certain on that.
I don't think the only people that are actually going to go out and see are people who are literally dying, like heart attacks and whatnot. But they're basically saying a lot of people who fall down, they're not going to go out for those people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're an elderly... I mean, for now, the public are supportive of this, but if we have, like, elderly people falling over, and as it speculates here, getting hypothermia with a broken hip. How long is the public going to support?
We have, I don't know whether this is at all useful, and it obviously doesn't sort of exactly replicate an ambulance service, but on our road we have a WhatsApp group with about a dozen houses that are close by. You know, it's mainly used as a sort of de facto concierge service, you know, to see who's got so-and-so's parcel taken in and so on. It might be worth people setting those up, though, in their neighbourhood.
Absolutely,
checking
on people.
Old folks and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Jack D used to do a great routine about some old bird next door to him who hadn't been around to see him throughout the entire winter. Lazy old cow hadn't even taken in her milk for the last 2 weeks. But slightly dark. But, you know, that kind of thing might be very necessary. Anything else on The Guardian we need to...
Well, there's the photo there. Essentially, they're celebrating Christmas in the underground because, of course, Putin's now sort of indiscriminately attacking Kiev with these drones, which were supposedly bought from Iran. And so this is like the only safe way that they can celebrate Christmas.
Well, I suppose it's 50-50 between them and old folk who aren't getting picked up by the ambulances at this stage. Nick, you have the Daily Mail.
Yeah, so obviously Mail's got the strikes as well, but it's going with Rishi, I won't back down over strikes. Rishi's a Tom Petty-esque threat there. And of course, that's OK to say that, but it can get you in trouble. I think Callaghan got in a bit of trouble with this stance back in the day. And it's citing here the fact that he'll tolerate months of disruption rather than risk an inflationary wage price spiral. So this is obviously Sunak hates fiscal irresponsibility, even though some people could argue he gave away a load of money during the lockdown. He seemed to be very reluctant about it. But the question is, how long can you actually hold out, given the kind of things we've talked about in the previous story, given the kind of mayhem we're going to have? So it'll be interesting to see who wins that. And I'm kind of with Peter Hitchens on this one, who was on Question Time and had quite a viral clip talking about he wanted nurses to be paid more, but he felt they shouldn't be allowed to strike if they go into that profession. But he wanted them to be paid more, you know, initially. I mean, as paramedics as well, so it's a bit complicated. But
the tricky situation we've had, and we've all lived through a golden era without, I think, very many of us really recognising it and basking in it, where inflation was low, and so, generally speaking, pay deals could be wrangled out, you know, in the usual traditional manner. As soon as inflation gets into double digits and starts leaping around all over the place, anyone who's in the public sector, you know, will immediately have recourse to their industrial action, and that has an inflationary pressure and the whole thing. I mean, you know, inflation, this is why you have to keep it down. It's like fire in a bloody dockyard, you know, it's absolutely...
And Rishi is banking on the fact that in a couple of months the inflation will go down, so there will be less of a case to make towards this 19%. But they're not realistic. They don't really want 19%. But what they would like is someone to actually talk to them about money, and that's what the government is not doing with the nurses.
OK, we can go to the Telegraph now, Josh, who I imagine probably a very...
Yeah, so just like there was a picture also in the Mail, but here there's another one here. Amber will be heard. So she has done a settlement with Johnny Depp for $1 million. She's sort of insinuating that it's not a loss, but I'd say $1 million kind of is. That's just me. I mean, you know, I'm crazy that way.
I suppose one of the questions is, arguably the big question, really, although it's harder to address, is whose career is in better shape at this point? Who comes out of this looking forward to the future? I mean, Depp he's re-emerged onto the illuminated bus stops, hasn't he, with his sausage advert? But
I would say he seems to have come out ahead of it. I don't think either of them, there was stuff that was revealed, the videos of both of them weren't looking good. I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with either of those people.
My wife was absolutely adamant that Johnny Depp was over, that no woman would go and see him in a movie after this, that he was, you know, and I was not quite so sure. And I don't know. I mean, you know, he has a slightly quirky, culty appeal anyway, doesn't he? But Amber Heard is much more mainstream, as far as I understand it, right?
Whether Hollywood will uncancel him, I don't know, but he's certainly won in the court of public opinion. Yeah. And I've defended him a lot. I felt a bit bad later because I found out he hadn't been particularly nice to our own Dan Wootton, but I think he wins in the court of public opinion. Also, she was ordered to pay $10 million in a compensation, and then punitive damages $5 million on top of that, whereas he had to pay her $2 million. So for her to come out with only $1 million is a win financially for her. Yeah. But I think in terms of public opinion, he's won it.
And also, he's just a much bigger star. He's been around for generations now. She's been in...
You can only compare like with like.
She's been in Aquaman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's it, essentially.
She might be the next Ms. Marvel or whatever. Anything else on the Telegraph? They usually have half a news
Yeah,
today.
so there's an interesting little story at the bottom there. Beijing accused of virus deaths cover-up. Now, this relates to a thread that I saw online earlier, quite an extensive thread, talking about how there's just been an explosion, obviously, because of the protests. They've sort of abandoned this zero COVID policy.
The vaccine isn't very good, right?
The vaccine's not good at all. They haven't rolled it out very much. There's a big vaccine hesitancy amongst the elderly. But there were these videos in this thread, were lots of videos of morgues, of people in hostels, like absolutely sardine-packed. Lots of people dying. They're saying that 1 million people could be dying, and it's that the R rate has gone to some point. This reminds me of all the scaring back in the day. But when you see the video footage, then suddenly, now I'm much more sceptical than I was a few years ago. So I'm like, well, where did that video come from? But it doesn't look good.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, obviously, these are people's lives, and I mustn't be flip about it, but there is that saying, this is a marathon, not a sprint. There was a point at which we were all convinced that the East Asian countries had acted with such extraordinary efficiency and ruthlessness, and we were not sure whether our people would have put up with that kind of thing, but the hospitals being built overnight and apartment blocks being... But they dealt with it, In fact, it turns out, no. It's actually, there's like many more chapters to unfold.
They've missed a massive window to actually vaccinate their elderly population, who are the most at risk, and people with underlying health conditions, with a good vaccine.
A good vaccine, that's the thing. There's a degree of nationalist pride.
Absolutely, it's hubris.
Of course,
which always brings down everything.
Nick, did you want to have a...
No, I'm not loads to say on that. Did you want to do the early retirement one or not?
Yeah, do it, mate.
Yeah.
Well, there's another story about early retirement, which is basically that... the pandemic's been blamed, which really means lockdown most of the time, for the fact that 565,000 people and fewer people classed as economically active are in the workplace now. So this is another one of these costs of lockdowns, which I always like to talk about. We had no idea what would happen when we just shut the world down for a couple of years. Absolutely mad. And there's more and more costs come out. We had the Strep A thing, some people linked to it. Inflation is, of course, linked to it. Just about everything. And the big thing is...
This is almost like a kind of psychological long COVID, these people.
Yeah. Because we found out, basically, people don't like working. No. And once we allowed them to find that out, of course, they want to work from home, or they just went, sod it, I'll retire.
Yeah.
Well, it can... I mean, I've noticed it. It can happen. A day or two can go by. If you're a stand-up comedian with you have a couple of days here and a couple of days there, whatever, but then a little bit... Sometimes you have a week and nothing much happens, and you just sort of start...
I never want to leave the house. Especially if it's cold out. You're like, I'll just never leave the house.
Take your foot off the pedal. I mean, arguably, it's a stand-up. There's an almost it's impulsive, like you have to do it. That's why you do it. When there was a few months, or once you got over that need, suddenly it's like, what, do I need to drive to Bournemouth on Friday?
You realise you're a lot happier, and I never went back, personally.
It's so true.
You guys got sucked back in.
Nick, we've got a couple of seconds to squeeze the Daily Star in just before the break.
Oh, well, this is the best story, so I don't know why we're doing it in 2 seconds, but this is Soz for being such a moron, and it's Clarkson, of course, apologising for what he said about Meghan Markle. Now, to me, I thought... Now, I'm not saying it was great. He did a crude satire, but to me, it was obvious it was a satire of Game of Thrones. He said she should have, like, excrement thrown at her walking through the streets. Obviously excessive, but he was going for a comic riff. I mean, he was saying how much he hates her, and to me, his own exaggeration was slightly self-deprecating. He's got this ridiculous hate fantasy for her.
I thought that.
So he's lampooning himself to a degree.
I am so afflicted by hate for her that my sleep is disturbed.
I'm such a middle-aged man. I'm just so angry. And so I thought, look, and I'm not saying it was great what he said, but I think the response has been absurd. I mean, Carol Drinkwater was saying on Twitter he should be fired, take away his platforms, it's misogyny, it's hate material. So cancel culture is back again. And I noticed that people like Dom Jolly were attacking him as if he's this great guy. Jason Manford was attacking him as if he's this great guy, and I know for a fact he isn't. So, because he attacked me during the worst part when I was being piled on, and he's got some questionable, public things himself. I don't want to dwell on that, but the point is, who are these people to be attacking him?
Well, I mean, there's definite blood in the water, and the sharks sniffing around. Saying that, you know what it's like with jokes, but I didn't... First of all, in his a non-apology, because he doesn't actually say the word sorry in it, one thing he didn't say was, look, I was just kind of joking. He does say, I made a reference to it. For me, that joke would be funny if it was taking the mickey out of someone who does obsess about Meghan Markle, and like, oh my God, I hate her more than Rose West, and that would make it funny if it was like... if it had that element to it, but that wasn't. He was saying it as himself. It's a weird one.
He misjudged the satire, but he doesn't deserve to be killed.
He got it wrong.
No, of course not.
I know, he definitely got it wrong, and probably a better apology would have worked. Anyway, that's it for the front pages. After the break, those two will be getting their teeth around the notable triumvirate of Musk, Trump and more Rishi Sunak. That is a Christmas feast. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. I'm joined by Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. So Nick has our first story of the second down. Tuesday's Telegraph. Sad news from one of the world's great live music venues.
Yeah, very grim. A security guard caught in Brixton Academy crush at a Shake gig dies. I hadn't really heard of a Shake, but it seems to be quite a popular artist. But very sadly, 2 people have died. This is Gabrielle Hutchinson and already Rebecca Ikamelu had died. And then a third woman remains in critical condition. So they got crushed at this gig. And I looked on Twitter for a bit more information, and people are even saying there were fake tickets, there were people sold dodgy tickets, and they were even saying people bribed staff. I don't know if that's true. That was just someone claiming that. So they're still investigating what happened. But yeah, it's just a horrible.
Gabrielle's the security officer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
she's a security officer. Yeah. I mean, it's horrible seeing if you've seen the footage. It's thousands of people there who shouldn't have been there, who would know they didn't have a ticket.
Did they know they didn't have a
Yeah. And it's just horrible. The security. It's not to blame the security that no one's going to anticipate that number of people rocking up. I go to that venue like once or twice a year. Last time I went with my 13-year-old son to see a hip hop group, and. It's just horrible to see that. The mum who died, she's got 2 kids, and now the security.
I used to go there a lot. We used to live.
It's a great venue. It's an amazing music venue.
Never remotely had any sense of a dangerous crush. But I mean, I guess that's sometimes a particular artist can attract a certain amount of volume fever without us even ever having heard of them. It's weird how this stuff happens when you get middle-aged, isn't it, and stuff. But I used to go and see the Pogues there always on Patrick's Day.
Well, I saw Ben Folds 5 there, so I think we've learned a lot about our different personalities.
How are we all in the same room?
Well, our sincere condolences to their family and loved ones. Tuesday's Sun, an actual sight of which I have to say would be a blessing, but that aside, the Sun. Looking confused. Elon Musk, has he overplayed his hand this time?
Well, Twitter users beg Elon Musk to quit after billionaire voted out in his own poll. He put up a poll basically saying, I will do this, whatever you say. 17.5 million people have voted, and 57.5% said, yes, he should stepped down. Now, this is, I mean, look, every day we've been talking about him on the show. Last week, there was a thing because he basically banned a bunch of journalists, and then I had a bunch of people like going, but they all doxed him. It's like, well, no, actually, some of them were talking about the doxing, some of them hadn't done it at all. Certainly goes against his ideas of free speech.
I think it's fair to say he's flying by wire, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely.
It's all over the shop.
Well, look, fair enough, his son got attacked. That's horrible. Yeah. But to tie it to, supposedly it was the day after there'd been a jet thing. Those people who look into like the backgrounds and they found out it had been the next day.
That hasn't been. That follow Santa, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and they also found out that that there was no connection to the jet. There was also no police report about the supposed crazy attacker or whatever. So, there's a lot going on here, and I don't know why he would do something like that. I mean, unless this is his excuse to get out, whether he will actually fall through.
I mean, I kind of support a lot of what he's doing in principle.
Yeah.
He does seem to be trying to reinvent the wheel to a degree that doesn't seem entirely necessary.
Well, I've been following this a lot, so I've been listening to all the Twitter spaces, which is fascinating at the moment. Yeah. Sometimes Musk himself pops up in them, and all kinds of famous people pop up.
And then
it's amazing. And and just to address Josh's doxing point, because he said I'm going to have to address it. Doxing is obviously nothing to do with free speech, two very different things. Saying the exact location of someone's child is nothing to do with...
Define doxing. Doxing is actually revealing someone's telephone number and home address, not where they are in any particular time. So that's number one. It wasn't technically doxing.
Well, doxing is quite a new word. I think it's probably... I think it could extend to mean the exact location of someone's jet. But I don't think it's the same thing as free speech. I think he's right to be anti-doxing, and you can still be pro-free speech. And he gave
these people hadn't done doxing.
And he gave a short suspension to the journalists and then reinstated them following a poll after one day. So, because he does these polls. Now, the question is, why has he done this poll? Now, some people think it's because he already has a CEO lined up. He was pictured with Jared Kushner at the football. So people say, well, is it Kushner? And some people say he's just got emotional. He's under pressure. He's being attacked a lot. He's had this doxing thing. He's under massive pressure. I thought Mike Cernovich put it very well. He said Elon thought he was buying a business. What he discovered was an intelligence community cutout designed to lie to the public and manipulate popular opinion. So, like Trump, he may have bitten off more than he can chew and not realise what he was up against. Musk is good at running businesses. He thought he was buying a tech business. He walks into this political minefield where the FBI are influencing Twitter, as we see in these files, etc. So, yes, so maybe he's just under pressure and wants out of the day-to-day running. I don't know.
We have to move on. Musk continues to drain the swamp tomorrow, I'm sure. Nick, a clash of the titans now in the Times. Two of the big beasts in the world of public sector pay increases and fiscal responsibility have dangerously irresolvable differences, it seems.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. So this is Rishi Sunak criticises Gary Neville after Qatar rant. And I'm sure many of you have seen it. Gary Neville went on this rant where he said, we can never accept human rights abuses in this region or any other region. And it's just worth mentioning we've got a current government in our country that are demonising rail workers, ambulance workers and terrifying nurses. So he used the Qatar, he made a sort of tasteless analogy between Qatar's human rights abuses and our own striking situation. And the other thing is, was it appropriate when you're watching the football to go on a sort of Labour Party political broadcast? And I thought, if you are going to do that, at least have Roy Keane give the positives of Milton Friedman to just balance it out a bit. Do you know what I mean? And I thought
Keane isn't man for Austrian economics.
I think so. And Keane was sat there. He missed a great opportunity, Keane, because he could have said, you're a train driver. That's your job, because that's his catchphrase. So he missed a great opportunity.
I would agree with you. I thought it was not so much that the conversation shouldn't be had, or even that Gary Neville shouldn't have it. Could quite easily put it if he's got a column in the Sun. But it did seem a bit odd in the midst of what is probably the single greatest World Cup final of our lifetimes.
Yes, and
it was a rather unnecessary thing to even bring up the Qatari immigrant crisis, which they've had an entire month pretty much to discuss to our heart's content, really. Yeah. To bring even that back in, let alone then to start making some comparison with the nurses.
And the one part I've not even mentioned is that Gary Neville took Qatari money to cover it. So
can't help wondering if there's a little bit of a guilty conscience.
Well, I believe, isn't there a football term, deflection?
Yeah.
Isn't that what was going on? That's what it seemed like to me. This is my big moment to sort of not seem such a hypocrite. And that's what he was. He was a hypocrite.
I think you might be right there. Although nobody, I don't think, at that point... I mean, that was the thing. The funny thing was, in the first week or two, maybe there was a bit of that. It's pretty much been laid to rest because, bizarrely, and I'm not saying this offsets, migrant deaths or whatever, although those numbers are very hard to really pin down, it has been an extraordinary success. The football has been great. The experience of watching a World Cup in our winter, I think, has been surprisingly satisfying.
I've got to be honest, I haven't watched...
You haven't watched...
I didn't watch any of it.
But that's not... Some extraordinary...
I heard that I heard the final was amazing.
And the only downside is that it was rigged for Messi to win. But
Yeah, it was, Ronaldo will certainly
I know, I think it's backfired on Qatar, but that's...
We will see. Nick, over to you now, still in the mirror, ever since... I think it's with you, is it?
Yep.
Josh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, no.
Josh.
Yeah, no.
We've had
me.
that one with
skipped
Jeremy.
one.
Yeah. Nick's still in the mirror. And ever since hosting a current affairs programme, I've been waiting for an opportunity to speak these words. I was afraid I started too late, but no, tonight I can confirm the walls are finally closing in on Donald Trump.
Well, maybe. I mean, certainly some people would like that. I mean, the headline is Donald Trump faces criminal prosecution after Jan 6 riot and conspiracy to defraud US. So the United States House Select Committee are going after him on several charges: obstruction of an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the US, conspiracy to make a false statement, incite, assist, or aid or comfort an insurrection. They said and insurrection. Or maybe it's an insurrection. Whatever. Yeah. The point is, it's a load of silly charges.
Are they all a load of silly charges?
And I'll explain,
oh, my God.
They're all pertaining to the 6th of January.
Yeah.
They're defrauding the US. That is a means of... That's a
load of silly
I don't know what
charges.
that means. I'm amazed that it's still going on. We've seen from the Twitter files all this dodginess. They tried to get Trump with incitement, and it was nonsense. We've seen the Trump tweets since he's been reinstated on Twitter. We saw his tweets were peaceful. He even said, "Go home with love and in peace."
3 hours after.
And so...
No, his tweets were clean. There was no question about that.
3 hours after.
Even Twitter themselves, let's not have a rant about this. Even Twitter themselves agreed in the back channels, as was discussed by Barry Weiss, it was clear they knew they had no case.
Exactly.
On his tweets.
Sure.
I'm not saying...
Just say it was 3 hours later.
And then...
OK, people had died by then.
And I...
No, Josh, the point is there were no tweets earlier than that calling for insurrection.
I get that.
We're not going to go through this.
I get that.
Okay.
Say one more thing. And I suppose, look, they obviously feel they have to investigate, but I just think... It's so bad for America. It's certainly going to, the idea of healing the country that Joe Biden lied about and to bring the country together. What they're trying to do is crush their political opponents. And I just think it's amazing they're still going on with this. But, hey, that's my take.
OK, Josh, have your go.
Well, just like Nick saying these are, nothing. Conspiracy to defraud the US, conspiracy to make a false statement, obstruction, inciting, assisting or aiding, comfort an insurrection. As I said, it was more than 3 hours. People are dying, and people
No.
He did not make a protest and ask. He did not ask them to leave. People
There was a woman shot by a police officer.
Okay, people died, and people are out there in the corridor. And it takes him 3 hours to say, "Hey guys, maybe go home." That's not a great president.
Well, that's a very different set of accusations.
Well, whatever. They've been investigating this for a year. Of course,
Nick isn't saying that the charges are insignificant. I don't think.
Well, he did say that.
I'm not saying I don't believe them.
The point is that they're trumped up. But the question is whether they will be regarded with gravity by the Department of Justice.
That is a big thing. But of course, it's not just that he's facing. He's got his tax problems going on. His company, a lawyer is going down. So
great for DeSantis, I guess.
Yeah. And by the way, he had a nice dinner with a white supremacist and a Holocaust denier. So, he's a great guy, isn't he?
OK, now we get to it. That's it for this part. Coming up, we've got Salt Bay's BFF, the Church of England's surprising sartorial preferences, and the resurgence of proper pubs across the water. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
And welcome back to Headliners. Let's kick off part 3 with the AI of the moment, which we're not going to mention Musk's involvement, but this is ChatGPT, Josh.
ChatGPT authors are at loss for words. So this is a new AI that is quite interesting. Basically, it's taken in all of these words and contracts, essays, scripts online, and now it can essentially come up with its own responses to things. And people are saying that might eventually, replace anybody who uses the written word. But a new study is coming out that's saying there's going to be this bottleneck in its ability to learn, because at some point it's just going to run out of high-quality words. So, there's arguments that...
Because it just recycles existing prose, existing copy.
To make... Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think this is what happened with Clarkson's column. That's possibly what happened.
ChatGPT would probably... I mean, it might be... That is a fair point, because one of the things that I think went wrong with Clarkson's comment is he assumed everybody knew the Game of Thrones well enough to understand. I didn't get that reference.
Really?
I do think sometimes these ChatGPT things are going to throw up stuff that is like where people are going to think, is this something everyone should know? I mean, the first casualty is likely to be essays. They think like anyone who's sent home, with an essay project over the weekend can literally just put a prompt into this software and it will just deliver, a perfectly workable B+ essay.
Yeah, that's the thing. They said it's in danger of putting people who write out of a living. That's why it's important you go to nickdixon.substack.com while you still can. But they're quite funny. If you look to these on Twitter, these ChatGPT things, they can be very funny. My worry is when they start knowing that they're being funny. Yeah. That's when we need to worry about the AI, because they're accidentally funny at this stage.
Well, there's a guy on Twitter who I was talking to this evening who's been trying to encourage one to write a Goon Show script, to write a script for Veep, the American sitcom, and it has no sort of no attack, no sense of humour, no jokes, nothing. But it does sort of feel strangely plausible, like a kind of quiet bit in one of those scripts.
Yeah, but you see those comics, it's like they sound like comics because they go up at the end of a sentence, but there's no content there.
I went to a stand-up gig in Rotterdam once. I was on. No, in The Hague. I was on. They had some English comics and the Dutch speak amazing English, but then we had to watch Dutch comics in between. And I was sort of laughing at the Dutch comics, because you kind of go, I get this. One of them was a bit like Frankie Boyle, I think. He had that, and it was just his rhythm. It was just, I was just laughing a lot.
Dutch Game of Thrones material must be almost impossible for you.
Celebrity pest news now, Nick, in The Sun. And given that neither of us are ever going to have the spare coin for a 600 quid steak, I think we can both safely enjoy watching Salt Bay getting mugged off by a goat.
This was annoying. Salt Bay slammed for pestering Lionel Messi and touching trophy in pathetic scenes after Argentina World Cup final win.
I think they got the video.
Oh, they got the video?
Yeah.
Well...
Keep talking.
OK.
They'll
Here we go. He tried... Oh, that's a different one. That's not even Messi, but that's the one he put on his Instagram, which is very annoying.
Trying to get that. That's absurd.
It's disgusting that he should touch the World Cup, and he sprinkled salt on it in a fake way. And that was Messi. Eventually, he's like, "Who's this guy?" Look at Messi's face, like, "Who's this guy?" Because what Salt Bay was it? This is why I didn't want to get a photo tonight with Andrew Tate. I was like, I don't want to be lame, because in the end I did. But he kept grabbing Messi's arm in a pathetic way.
Yeah.
And Messi's like, "Who's this guy?" And it was also like, did you see Macron doing it with Mbappe?
Mbappe trying to console it. That was the one I did see live, and I thought that was hilarious. He had no time for him at all, and that's Macron. I mean, he's the actual president of Salt Bay. I didn't even know he was Argentinian. I assume he is from this.
Oh, Salt Bay? No, I don't think he is. He just wanted. Isn't he originally Turkish or something? He just wanted.
I thought he was Turkish. So what's he doing there?
So he's just there trying to get a photo or whatever. But on Twitter, someone said this is the cringiest thing ever, and I'm thinking, since, his last video that he put out. I mean, he's not exactly a cool guy.
He is one of those people, isn't he, who you feel he's had his couple of moments, he's had his year in the sun, it's all going to go weird for him. I mean, I'm sure his restaurant chain will survive for a while. But
Messi assault.
Yeah, it could go weird for Messi now. But yeah, these people, you like sort of surf this. It's like a bubble, isn't it? It's like a real estate bubble or something. Somebody's reputation like that. There's a few, everyone going, oh, it's amazing the way he puts a bit. There is nothing to this bloke, absolutely nothing. And Messi, on the other hand, is from another planet. Josh, Tuesday's Telegraph now. The Church of England have been taken for a ride, or at least their money has.
Yeah, Church of England official took 5.2 million and spent it on flights and Burberry. As you do. I'm sure Nick's very upset because he donated some of it to the church as a Christian. And Ted Baker, online fruit machines, he's saying it's the classic, I was addicted, but then that doesn't explain how he bought 7 properties, 3 of them in Scotland for £1 million.
No, that's not an
and all of this is well thought out stuff here. So,
You've seen him, by the way, as well.
Have I seen? No.
He is. Okay. He's not possibly. I don't know. He's not quite what I pictured.
What did you?
He's at least 30 stone. He looks like Steve. What's his name? Steve McFadden. If he was had been in.
So he's obviously spent a bit of it on salt-based steaks.
I don't think he's just had Burberry.
But this has been good. That went on for a good years. It's between 2010 and 2019, and they weren't discovered. And he took that money, saying that he was to the church that he was going to be spending it on churches in the London that needed. It's help.
Roofs.
Yeah, and whatnot. And obviously that money just went for him, and he's got 5 years. And to me, that's like, £1 million a year?
I suppose if he's had a good life, then 5 years is a reasonable.
I mean, he is going to hell.
But that's true. I suppose the question is, do they get back the properties in Scotland? Is that where he spent most of the money? They can just go and get those then, can they?
Is that the question?
Get the Burberry clothes back. Can they have a bit of a rumble sale to flog off the Ted Baker? Oh, dear. What have we got next? Next Tuesday's Telegraph. The Archbishop of Canterbury, we're staying with the Church of England, he has an unusual message. It seems Jeremy Clarkson and Jesus Christ have more in common than just their initials.
Yes, cancel culture is crucifying people, Justin Welby claims. Now, this is interesting. He was talking to Laura Koonsberg, and he said, I think we just haven't adjusted to the way we communicate. He's talking about social media. When people make a mistake, they're absolutely, to use a phrase from my world, crucified for it. And he said that we don't have forgiveness anymore.
Yeah.
Which, of course, we don't. That's the problem with the decline of the church. We don't have a mechanism for forgiveness. We used to be a Christian society. Now we're secular, and we don't forgive. Now, with Welby saying this, it's interesting because he's been a part of the problem himself in a sense because he's been quite woke. He's been very politicised. He's part of the reduction in influence of the church. He said things like Jesus would get a vaccine, which I thought was a bizarre thing to say. So, but occasionally he can be right. So here he is right.
So he said that Jesus would get a vaccine?
Yeah. But I just thought it was a strange intervention to say that.
And why? Wouldn't he just cure himself?
Well, yeah, people had these kind of questions. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he didn't exactly like going along with the state either, Jesus. But look, it's a strange thing for him to say this. Well, this time he's actually right, but he's kind of all over the map, isn't he? So he's made these strange interventions in the past. Now he's saying cancel culture is bad. But at least I agree with him on this.
I feel he should have pointed out what one of the disciples would have done. I don't think it's meaningful to say would Jesus have got the vaccine. I know that's not the current.
No, you're right.
But it feels like to me it's like he's wandered into an unnecessary tar.
And just quickly, in the past he said no platforming is not a new phenomenon, and there's evidence to suggest it's very limited. Well, what does that mean? So it sounds like he was supporting this kind of thing in the past.
I remember when we first started talking about cancel culture, one of the first things that came up, and Andrew Doyle, of course, has wrote the book about it, has identified this, that it was very like a kind of virulent strain of puritanical Christianity, but without the possibility of redemption. It feels like maybe...
Well, that's this book, is it? The New Puritans.
That's right.
Available from all good booksellers.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is a bit offensive to sort of use crucifixion in this way. It slightly diminishes all those people who've been crucified.
Exactly. If it was Jeremy Clarkson saying it, I wouldn't mind, but it is a bit odd, the Archbishop of Canterbury, using crucifixion metaphorically, isn't it?
Yeah, that's strange as well.
Yeah, things are strange in the world. Josh? Back to Tuesday's Daily Star. There's no strangeness here. It seems there are still 1 or 2 proper bars where they expect you to sink a few pints in the birthplace of George Best, Van Morrison and the Titanic.
Sure, this is in Belfast. Landlord bans Coca-Cola from his pub as it's only for drinkers. So essentially he just wants alcoholics there.
Yeah.
He won't even sell half pints. So he's saying it's a famous place for
Guinness.
Bittles Bar in Belfast city centre, and supposedly there's only like 10 seats or something like that. And he's like, You know what? It's his business. He can sell to whoever he wants to. But there is a little... I've never heard a person use this as an excuse before, where he says that if the people pay you cash, they also are using up all your change in the till. So that's a bit... That, for me, is like... It's like, what, someone is spending money in your establishment.
Yeah.
Don't then sort of crucify them for using up your change.
Can't say crucify then in Belfast. They still won't have a sense of humour.
It's all right for him to have his niche, isn't it? My question is, what if... Because he's talking about the amount of tables being used. What if the guy offered to pay a pint of Guinness price for just a Coke? I'm not sure if that's legal, but then...
You'd probably get through it more quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And then it'd free up the table. So that'd be my only question about that.
I haven't seen a picture of this bar. It's hard to tell for sure, but it's one of those with like the Flatiron building, but on a smaller scale. You know, it's very narrow. It comes to a point at the end of the street. It really might be quite small. And all the
10
pictures
tables
inside are, you know, there's a big picture of Seamus Heaney surrounded by empty bottles and stuff. It does look like a proper... He might just be somebody who's creating a bit of PR. But I do remember there used to be a thing. I mean, like the Coach and Horses was famous in Old Compton Street. You know that one?
Yeah.
Because the landlord was absolutely like...
it was a big Francis Bacon problem.
Exactly, yeah. And Jeff Binnin was the cartoon in Private Eye about Geoffrey Barnard is unwell. That was where he used to get unwell, basically.
Okay.
It was known that the landlord was rude to you, and people like that. I think, you know, there is a place for that. In every city needs a couple of pubs where you can know that you're going to get absolutely scoured.
And kicked out
immediately. Abused and humiliated. Anyway, that's it for this part. Coming up, distressed swingers, spiky genitals, and a ban on Amsterdam's red light district. And that's just Josh's Christmas plans. See you in a couple of minutes.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
And welcome back to the final part of Headliners. Nick, Tuesday's Telegraph. It turns out that social stigma to reinforce healthy norms does still work after all. That, of course, is not how this is being framed.
Well, that's the question. Is social stigma good? So the headline's giving swingers the cold shoulder causes them psychological distress. And they're saying that swingers are snubbed by the rest of society to the detriment of their own health. This is from a study from 372 people and found they had negative health impacts. But it's not just swingers, of course. It's a much bigger thing than that. So they talk about polyamory, which is kind of just posh cheating. I mean, the thing is with polyamory, I always think, you know, you sort of imagine it's some sort of posh lefty girl with a boyfriend, and does he really want to do it? That's what I sometimes imagine. But there's also this other side online on YouTube in the so-called red pill world, whereby they do say we should do open relationships because the relationships have collapsed. We've got no-fault divorce. We've got women initiate 75-80% of divorces. And we've got, you know, everything's broken down. We've got people on OnlyFans and so on. And so their argument is this is just a rational response. Obviously, I would prefer a sort of people be married and sort of tradcon approach. So the question is really, should we stigmatize people for the sake of society in many areas, or should it be about individual total freedom to do what you want?
I'll tell you my view on this. There's a guy on Twitter. I'm trying to remember his name. He wrote a book called The Mating Mind. He's quite an interesting sort of evolutionary psychologist guy, Dr. Jeffrey something or other, and he's famously polyamorous. It's his Twitter handle is like Polyprof or something like that. And he famously, perhaps you might say notoriously, said, if you want to make a polyamorous relationship work, you have to be quite high IQ. You all have to be quite high IQ. And he was kind of ridiculed for this, as if he was trying to make it into like a high status activity. But I think he's right. I think you have to be highly intelligent in the same way that you have to be highly intelligent to discuss difficult topics that you might feel emotive about, but be able to sort of engage and toy with unacceptable ideas in order to see. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, do you mean because they have to transcend jealousy and emotional responses? All right, I see.
You have to be your brain. You have to live in your head more. If you live in your heart, let alone in your genitals, you're gonna struggle with. In any relationship, there are always, in any two people relationship, there's always one person who is more jealous than the other. There's one person who would like a bit more freedom and the other person who is watching their every step.
Well, evolutionary psychologists would also probably say men are hardwired for jealousy.
Well, that's something we've all found is not quite as simple, isn't it, in the last few years, because we have, when Grindr came out, everyone said, oh, that's great for gay men, but that would never work for because in heterosexual relationships, because women are, looking for a man to settle down with. Well, along comes Tinder, and it turns out that we were all completely... What do you think, Josh?
I think that this is a really pernicious article, and it goes to a deeper thing of trying to equate kink with one of the most, essentially saying that they're persecuted for their, what it says here, marginalised identities. No, it's a choice. You're making a choice, and this sort of ties into this whole like LGBTQIA+, everything that's after.
So P, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And so this stuff like upsets me because they are trying to sort of draw a correlation here. They're literally drawing a correlation between the people who are choosing to live this way, and if they want to live that way, that's fine, and people who are gay or bisexual who have no choice. That's the way they're born. So when I read things like this, where they're trying to sort of smash them all together, excuse my wording, and they're putting it in the wrong category, I think, and it upsets me because you can, and I've got to be honest, I disagree with your thesis as well, or the guy's thesis, because in my experience, the people I know who are polyamorous, there might be one of the people who's higher IQ, and usually a few of the others who are not, and it usually is one sort of, usually the guy who is sort of somewhat, I wouldn't say aggressive, but dominant and quite passive women. And I'm not saying that that's the only mode or model out there, but I've seen it that way. There's the most I've seen it.
Are you saying that high IQ doesn't correlate with it being successful for that person?
Well, no, it's successful for the guy, but but usually it's put upon sort of quite. Basically, what I'm saying is it's quite a dominant guy and usually quite mousy women, and that's what I've seen. And I'm not saying that's every polyamorous relationship, but those are the ones that I've seen in my life, and I've seen a few of them like that.
I would tend to agree. I don't know many in my personal circle, but. Do you know Theodore Dalrymple? We talked about him before. That's a pen name of a guy who writes columns, quite right-wing columns. But one of his points of view, he's a prison doctor and stuff. All his books are about what he calls like the underclass or whatever. And one of his main principles, which I think is like he makes the case for very well, is that the intelligentsia, middle class, liberals or whatever, have a habit of tearing down social norms and living according to their own rules and being capable of coping with that. But this creates examples which people who have more chaotic lives and need a bit of structure in there, then fall into the trap of trying to emulate.
I agree. And normally I'd be sort of more vehemently against this, but I'm so sort of black-pilled on the idea of I'd like to go back to traditional relationships and marriage and Christianity, but I just don't think it's going to happen. So now I'm saying some of these responses might be rational, even if you might find them degenerate.
Well, we might be finding a new normal in time. We're not there yet. Over to The Guardian now, Josh. And talking of social stigma, it turns out that sharp spines on your genitals will stop you getting swallowed.
Yes, very good. Certainly protected me a few times. Male mason wasps use genital spines to thwart predators. Study reveals that these mason wasps now, the female wasps are meant to be more deadly. They actually have a sting, whereas these males, they have, I guess, like I said, these spines or something. And when they've been put in with these tree frogs, the tree frogs basically will spit out about a third of them will survive by basically going inside their mouth. If you can imagine Return of the Jedi, and then there's a bit where Luke gets swallowed by the big monster down below, and then he uses a bone. So instead of doing that, it's a different type of bone they're using, essentially, in that mouth to stop the monster.
That is very effective.
The Sarlacc pit monster.
Thank you very much.
I haven't seen that film. I have seen a bit of the video of this, and it's one of the most horrific, because frogs, when their tongues come out, are horrible anyway, aren't they? They're the big kind of gelatinous, not a tongue at all, is it? It's like kind of living spit.
The pond frog is the only one that can eat them because of its higher tolerance.
Oh.
It's kind of like the bit in The Princess Bride where he's like, no, I've simply developed a tolerance for this poison.
The Mason wasp.
Yeah.
I'm loving all the 80s film references. Nick, back to the mirror and bend over. No, sorry. Back to the mirror. Back to Tuesday's Mirror. For more killjoy news, even red light districts are going cashless and online. Is that right?
Yeah, this is fascinating, actually. Amsterdam may ban red light district windows and ask brothel clients to book online. So, and someone's saying it's going to improve women's position in the Me Too era. And the idea is you won't be able to keep those curtains anymore. You won't be able to have the women sort of displayed, if you like, in the window.
No.
Instead, you'll have to book it with a QR code. And that is a sort of Rousseauian vision of everything permitted but under the state, if you like, if that's not too highbrow for this time of night. So it's kind of and what's interesting, though, is that the sex workers don't like it. They say, how can I attract clients with the curtains closed? This was a Dutch sex worker who said
With their personalities.
And then they said, if I denigrate, if someone has a go at me and they're drunk, I can have a go at them back. I know who they are. They're not some weirdo that's booked it. They're saying it's actually less safe for them. And this is quite a weird, this is a very Dutch fact. She says, look, you don't have to answer mails, you don't have to pay for web adverts. You register at the Chamber of Commerce, buy a set of laundry and a box of condoms, and you can begin.
That's a sort of Commerce.
Yeah, chilling vision of Dutch liberalism there for all of us. But
I want to make it clear, I've not used one of these, but I did go on a stag weekend once when some of the lads did, and from what I understand, there's these cabins. They didn't sleep with the women. It's all done behind glass. You kind of go in and it's like a live floor show, but behind glass. Is that what they're talking about here? Or are they talking about actually...
No, there's not advertising your wares from behind the glass. I've seen it in films and stuff, Simon. They're behind the glass.
There's a high turnover version where I think you pay like a few euros and you get 10 minutes of sort
You've heard. Yeah. Can I say one more thing which is key?
Yes.
They've tried to put off British sex tourists, and they've got a new advertising, a kind of post-capitalist advertising campaign that's a discouragement campaign. And they're saying it's going to focus on British tourists first. Why is it always us? That's what I want to know.
Well, why do you
get the bad reputation?
I consider that an honour. I feel like we're number one.
I think it's just the availability of the ferry service, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's as simple as...
But this is also the right and the left coming together. It's the Dutch Liberal Party and the Christian Democratic Appeal Party. So both of them basically trying to kick out tourists. And it does somewhat ruin what's a very beautiful city, having too many of these sort of drunk people
running around. The coffee shops in the red light district are all part of the same kind of seething pit of despair and disgrace, aren't they? The coffee shops where you get the marijuana. And I don't know whether that feels a bit dated to me as well now, somehow.
Also, the way you say the marijuana.
I've never been. I'm never going to leave this country.
Hit me up with your bong. Josh, Tuesday's Mail. It sounds like a very interesting new strain of spinach has emerged in Australia.
Yeah, God, it's a dangerous country, isn't it? Baby spinach crisis deepens as hundreds of Aussies left hallucinating and in state of delirium after eating mixed-in toxic plant. Who knew? There's a bunch of people, they've been hallucinating, they've got rapid heartbeats. It's affected supposedly about 160 people across New South Wales. And it's because, I think a lot of plants have the ability to do this for whatever reason, which
but
is
spinach, is it developed? I mean, what is the word? Like, when they fill about with natural plants.
They're saying it's
cultivated from or whatever.
I think that, and they don't know exactly why it is, but I imagine someone out there is going to be trying to find out why and then replicate it. Or whatever.
But they're already putting warnings out saying you mustn't do this.
Yeah, don't do it. Well, it says here not to search for a cheap high, avoiding it, and there might be an hallucinogenic side, but actually it doesn't put people off. They're like, you're going
literally Popeyes.
Yes, very good. I literally wrote Popeye, literally. You got there before me.
Finally, Nick, we have time for one more story. Earth faces a mass extinction by 2100. Wrap that up in about 40 seconds, could you?
Yeah, Earth faces mass extinction by 2100, allegedly. This is modelling, though. That's the key thing. This is some scientists who have modelled this. And I just don't trust modelling at all after SAGE. Modelling is the real danger, not anything else, in my opinion. But they're saying there'll be a 6th mass extinction. They're saying there's been 5, and they're saying the humanity's wanton destruction. Note the religious language there, as we discussed before. And they're saying, look, the dinosaurs were killed in this way, which no one really knows.
There has been discussion of the sixth great extinction for at least 20 years. I have a book at least that's at least 20 years old called...
Well, the interesting thing about this particular model, it's the first time they've ever factored in other species effects. So if one species dies out, the knock-on effect, and they've never done that before, and that's why they're... And it's also the worst, that's the worst possibility.
Yeah.
They're saying it could also be like 6% to 18%.
I'm afraid, I mean, I think it's entirely likely. It's quite possible we'll carry on living without them.
We'll bring them back, though, with our
you want extinction
gene
lockdown
splicing and whatnot.
With our walking sticks of amber. Well, that is all we have time for, as the species might say. Thank you to my panel, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. It has been a good, robust conversation as ever. Tune in at the same time tomorrow for more Headliners. I'll be joined by Kerry Miles and Lewis Schaefer. See you then. Good night.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB